Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Simpson, and normally I don't start off something like this by promoting a book, but I am going to promote this book on a piece I'm doing for the YouTube, which is entitled Cannabis Nation Debunked. And I think this book deserves a lot of attention. The author of this book died in 2000 because the system literally killed him by denying him the use of marijuana. And he's written this wonderful book, called Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do, the absurdity of consensual crimes in our free country. And it's available from the Prelude Press. And I think it's a very, very good read because it promotes the truth, much as the same as the books that I put out on my website, phoenixtears.ca. And I'm in favor of any book that brings the public the truth. So look into it and give it a good read, and I think you'll enjoy it. And by the way, this is a picture of the gentleman himself that wrote the book. This is Peter McWilliams, and it's a horrible story, about what he went through. But that is what our system is currently doing to so many. All right, it's getting late in the day, so I'm going to put on my reading glasses. Even my eyes get tired sometimes. Every one of us who are suffering from a wide variety of medical conditions are literally being sacrificed at the altar of our own ignorance and stupidity. We meekly sit and listen to nonsense like more study is needed and human trials must be conducted before the resins from the cannabis hemp plant can be used as a medicine to treat our medical difficulties. Why can we simply not accept the fact that human trials have been going on now for over 10 years, and the effectiveness of this natural harmless medication has been proven time and time again to millions worldwide? Due to all the unfounded restrictions against the use of this plant, little of this research has been performed in such a way that it would satisfy the needs of all these individuals who are trying to restrict or even eliminate this medication's free use so they can maintain high profit margins. But in reality, why should any of us be concerned about their restrictions and opinions or needs, when in truth, these people are nothing more than criminals whose only aim is to stifle the use of this wonderful natural medication, which could ease the suffering of everyone, everywhere. If a medication presents no danger to the patient and is effective, as this oil has already proven itself to be, who among us actually has the right to prevent the public from taking advantage of its miraculous benefits? No one has such a right, and we all know it. So why don't we simply brush the opinions and double talk these individuals are spouting aside and get on with what needs to be done? Then we would all be free to grow and produce our own medicine if we choose to do so. For many years now, we have been subjected to a massive misinformation campaign regarding cannabis, which was perpetrated by the rich elite who are running our world from the shadows to avoid exposure. To achieve their goals, they have used doctors and researchers under their control to feed us a constant barrage of lies over information medias such as television, newspapers, magazines, and radio, etc., which for the most part they also control. Sadly, even many magazines and radio shows which concern the subject of cannabis have allowed themselves to become involved with this deception also, by doing interviews and publishing articles that have been written by these frauds who have hidden agendas which support the policies of the rich elite. I think we all have the right to our own opinions, but when we allow individuals that wish to bring harm to us all to spread this type of propaganda freely in our different information medias, it is truly a disservice to mankind. Just recently I came into contact with two individuals who host a show called Cannabis Nation Radio. After looking over those they had interviewed in the past, it quickly became clear to me that it would not serve the public or this cause if I consented to do an interview, since I felt that in the past their broadcast had promoted organizations and individuals that they should have exposed. So from my perspective, either they did not know what they were doing, or they were openly promoting misinformation for as yet some unknown reason. We exchanged many emails which can be read on my Facebook, and I even offered them a free copy of my book in the hope that it would help them see the error of their ways. Instead of taking the time to go over my book and educate themselves so they might be able to do more effective interviews in the future, they chose instead to mount a smear campaign against me, which they launched on the broadcast they did on October 4th, 2013, which is available in their archives. To make it known to the public what really went on between myself and the hosts of Cannabis Nation Radio, Mike Booten and Julie Rose, and why I really refused to do their show, I have taken the time to write these statements in the hope that it will make things crystal clear to those who are interested. On October 4th, Mike Booten and Julie Rose did a show on Cannabis Nation Radio, which I feel was simply designed to bring discredit to both me and my work. But unfortunately for them, the facts do not back up the bogus statements they made, and much of what they said can be easily disproved by simply reading the emails which they sent to me and the replies I provided. When it is your intention to prove that someone is a fraud, you would better make sure that you know what you are talking about, or otherwise what you are saying is just slander. To promote their lies and deceptions, this is what Mike Booten and Julie Rose stooped to when they lied and tried to distort the truth to suit themselves during the interview they did with Peter O'Toole. They made sure to do little or nothing to bring the truth to the public as to why I refused to do the interview they had requested. Instead, they made many claims and accusations that in reality had no basis in fact. This leads me to believe that individuals of this caliber should not be allowed to do broadcasts concerning important issues, such as the use of this medication, because they have now proven themselves to be unworthy of our trust. The real reason I refused to do their interviews was because I feel that many of their shows are promoting the agendas of people and organizations which I knew to be frauds. If I had been weak-minded enough to go along with doing their interview, it would have drawn more listeners to their shows. But this would only serve to promote the misinformation they provide while doing interviews with others who are only out to fulfill their own aims, which have nothing to do with the greater good of the public. During the show they did on October 4th, 2013, it was more than obvious to myself and many others that both Julie and Mike were simply grandstanding in an effort to make themselves and what they were doing look good. But to those in the know, they made fools of themselves and proved just how small-minded and dim-witted they really are. So let's go back and touch on some of the statements they made to see if they hold water. At one point, Mike Booten stated that I had contacted Julie Rose in an effort to have him fired. In reality, I did not contact Julie Rose with any such request. Instead, it was Julie Rose who contacted me. And if you read the emails which I have provided on my Facebook, they will prove that what Booten said was simply fabricated to make it seem to the public that I was out to get him. On the show, they stated that they had contacted friends of the late Jack Hare and had been told Jack had never stated that he wished for me to take his place. Therefore, my claim to the leadership of the movement was in no way legitimate. It's too bad that Mike and Julie had never taken the time to read my book, for if they had, they would have learned about the deep respect that Jack and I had for one another. They would also have known that in truth, I really did not want to become leader of the movement. This position was thrust upon me by High Times' own Steve Hagar when he made Jack's wishes known at his graveside service in April 2010. And once Steve had made this statement, out of respect for Jack, I complied. I watched this all unfold on the internet when I was stranded in Europe in a heartbroken state over Jack's death. And if you go on the internet, this sad event is likely still available online. Yet these so-called well-informed radio hosts who pretend to be deeply involved with the movement seem to have no knowledge about any of this. Instead, they preferred to give the impression to the public that I am simply a liar, even though countless numbers heard the statements which Steve Hagar had made at Jack's funeral, and it is a well-known fact to those who knew Jack and respected him that these actually were his wishes. Then Mike and Julie went on to say that I had no right to claim that I am the man who found the cure for cancer and all these other health problems. They stated that this distinction belongs to some guy named O'Shaughnessy, who was doing similar work way back in 1839. First off, I have never claimed to be the only person who has found a cure for cancer. I have always stated that I am only one of many who have used different methods to cure cancer and other medical problems. My only claim to fame would be the simple fact that I was the first to make knowledge about the amazing healing powers of the cannabis plant known to the public in a very big way. And I also developed protocols for the oil's use, which have proven to be quite effective. I did not piggyback on anyone else's work. I developed my own methods to produce the oil, and I knew nothing about what O'Shaughnessy was doing back in 1839. If indeed this man was producing high-grade medicinal hemp oil way back then, and he was achieving the wonderful results that they described on the show, then why is it this information is only coming to the surface now, after 174 years have gone by, and who was hiding it while our loved ones were all dying? I have to question just how Cannabis Nation Radio came across this information when it seems that most of the rest of us had no knowledge of its existence. So to me, something does not smell right about all of this, and I think we should all demand an explanation. In a moment of biblical inspiration during the show, Mike Booten stated that he had contacted me and he had informed me that I did not die on one of the 3 crosses in Calvary. Well, the simple truth is, I have never received a communication from Mike Booten regarding me dying on the cross, and I think he only made this statement to suck up to the religious types who were listening. Anyone who knows me is aware of the fact that I have no use for religion, and it would be a waste of time to contact me with such nonsense. So again, Mr. Booten was lying through his teeth in the hope of making himself look good. Then they went on to imply that I was trying to get money out of them, and after they would not supply what I was demanding, I refused to do their interview. All you have to do is read the emails. Do you see any mention of money in any of them? No, you do not, because I never asked them for a thing. The real reason I refused to do their interview was simply because I felt that they were providing a platform for evil people and organizations with hidden agendas, and I wanted no part in what they were doing. When the form they sent me asked that I supply the questions which I was to be confronted with on their show, off went the alarm bells in my head, and I then looked into their archives to see who they had interviewed in the past. Sure enough, the list contained many people and organizations which I knew were only there to muddy the waters so the public could not see the truth. It's bad enough when Cannabis Nation is willing to provide airtime to riffraff like this, but when they allow them to provide the questions they wish to be asked, I really do not think that this could be classified as doing an interview. And what purpose would this serve other than to spread deception? Next, they stated that I refuse to listen to anything regarding methods that other people use to produce the oil. And when it comes to manufacturing the oil, it must be done in only the way I have described, or I have no interest. Again, this is a bald-faced lie, and I am always looking for new and better ways to produce this wonderful medication. If Mike and Julie had simply read the book I had offered them for nothing, they would have seen that I encourage everyone to come up with new and better methods if possible, and they also would not have made such fools of themselves. As a side note, I must add that although the method I showed the public, which allows them to produce these oils, is crude at best, still, to my knowledge, I am not aware of any other method that can produce oils which are more effective and medicinally potent. Some of the statements made by Mike and Julie implied that I refused to do their interview because I had something to hide and that I would not comply with their wishes because I might be exposed. I have done a great number of lectures and seminars in many different countries, and I have also spoke at some well-known medical schools in both Europe and North America. In addition to all this, I have done countless interviews on the internet, national television stations in Europe, and radio stations across the globe. Not once has anyone ever tried to take me on and disprove anything I have stated. So does it seem logical to you that I would be afraid to be confronted by Mike and Julie when they have no medical knowledge about this substance and even the so-called experts remain mute in my presence, I think you would have to agree that it would be highly unlikely. When you read the emails that were exchanged, it's very clear that they put Peter O'Toole on the air in the hope that it would irritate me. But in fact, I found the way they went about all this to be quite amusing, and it proved the line from Forrest Gump to be true. Stupid really is as stupid does. For in reality, all they managed to do was prove to us all how small-minded they really are, and they also showed that everything I had suspected about their broadcasts were more than true. When Peter came on the air, he started crying that the Phoenix Tears Foundation had kicked him to the curb. But the real truth is, he walked away from the foundation himself, and as I recall, at the time he also stated that he was going to have nothing more to do with Cannabis Camp. Anyone who has come into contact with Peter for any length of time knows that he is not the most stable person on the planet. Even though he can appear to be quite well spoken at times, he often goes off the deep end when someone disagrees with him, and even when he is obviously wrong, he tends to lash out at those around him. So when Mr. O'Toole left the foundation, we were sure to bolt the door and batten down the hatches so he could not come back. During the show, it appears that they were all trying to promote the use of lower quality oils, which I feel is very bad advice, and Peter admitted himself that the highest THC levels he had ever attained was only 60%. They also insinuated that the extremely powerful medicinal oils which I described cannot be produced. Then Mike and Julie called Dr. Robert Malamede, and he stated that the highest THC levels he had ever encountered in the oils he had worked with was 75%. Robert Malamede is widely recognized as a man who is supposed to know a great deal about this subject, but I really have to question the low percentage that he mentioned, since I have produced oils that contain much higher THC levels with ease. Excuse me. Recently, when I was in British Columbia, we produced about 40 grams of oil from a half a pound of clippings and 4 ounces of bud that we had added to the clippings to increase the oil's potency. From my experience, the starting material we had to work with that day could hardly be classified as being in the same category as the high-grade material I have worked with in the past. So after we had produced the oil, I told the gentleman who had helped me that I thought this oil would only test out to be around 70 to 75% THC. A few days later, when I was speaking at Weeds in Vancouver, a beautiful mobile test facility was also present at the event. The gentleman I was traveling with wanted to know the exact level of THC in the oil we had produced, so since the test facility was right there, he took some oil over to be tested. When he received the results, the oil we had produced from this lower quality material proved to be 76.6% THC, which was right in the range I had expected. So if I can produce oil from low-grade material that has THC levels such as this, I find it very strange that Dr. Malamede says he has never come into contact with oils that were higher than 75%, a percentage that I have already achieved without even using high-quality bud. In addition, I found other statements that Dr. Malamede made during the interview to be somewhat questionable as well, and I have no idea why a man with his background would utter such things. Although Robert Malamede has proven himself to be a great advocate for the oil's use, I have also heard him and other well-known doctors and researchers state that it might be beneficial to use the oil along with chemo. Why do these doctors and researchers continue to come out with such statements when they are perfectly aware that chemo is nothing more than rank poison, which does a great deal of harm to our bodies, and indeed its effects often kill the patient? To me, giving any patient chemo and radiation is little more than insanity, and I believe that anyone with even a small amount of common sense would agree. So at present it appears that there is still a great deal of misinformation floating around out there, and much of this nonsense is being distributed by people who should know better. So in the interest of saving lives, I believe it's time for these individuals to withdraw their heads from the backsides of the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA. Then they might be able to look at things a bit more rationally and get on with the job at hand, which is saving lives. A few months ago, during one of his manic phases, Peter O'Toole even offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who could show him test results from oils which were produced following my methods that had a THC content of over 95%. Within 2 or 3 days, I'm told that Peter was provided with the test results that he required from a man in the U.S. who produced his oil following my methods. The test which had been performed proved that this oil was 95.58% THC. Yet strangely, I have heard nothing about Peter making good on his offer to pay the reward, and still he continues to spout that oils such as this cannot be produced. The problem with people like Peter O'Toole is that they are trying to produce high-grade oil from low-grade starting material, and this just does not work. If they were using high-grade bud to extract the oil from, their cannabinoid levels would raise dramatically, and perhaps then they would be able to save more lives. Many people do not seem to understand the importance of having an oil which has an extremely high cannabinoid levels. So let's look at it this way. If you were dying from cancer, would you want to treat it with the most medicinally powerful oil possible, or would you sooner use an oil that is much less medicinally active? Explained in this way, I think that it's kind of a no-brainer that anyone should be able to understand. The problems between Peter O'Toole and I began when he started shooting off his mouth about naphtha and tried to tell me that it was harming people. So therefore he insisted that it was my duty to inform the public not to use this substance as a solvent, because he felt that it was not suitable to produce the oil with. I have been using naphtha to produce the oils which I ingest for over 12 years. Have I suffered any ill effects from this solvent? No, I have not. And if I had, do you really think that I would be telling the public to use it? The problem is, in America, big money interests have made the pure light naphtha, which I used in Canada, quite hard to find. And in addition, there are many different grades of naphtha, and this tends to bewilder the public because they are simply not listening to what I have been telling them. In many different interviews I have done, I informed the American people that this problem exists, but still they continue to go out and purchase the wrong solvent. In addition, I have told them on many occasions of a very simple method to ascertain if they have found the proper solvent to work with. Now brace yourself, folks, because this is truly rocket science. Open the lid of the solvent you intend to purchase, then dip your finger into it. If you have found the proper solvent, it should be clear like water, and it will evaporate off your finger in 30 to 40 seconds, leaving no residue behind. Now, how much more simply could one explain this? Yet still, it seems that people like Peter cannot grasp what I am telling them. Ether is my solvent of choice, but since it is expensive and can be hard to acquire, I turned to naphtha, because I found that it worked almost as well as ether. It was also much less expensive than ether or alcohol, and it was readily available in the area I lived. During the show, Mike Booten stated that all you had to do was get some cheap vodka to produce the oil with. But vodka is only 40% alcohol, and even 151 proof is only 75%. And either one of them is not fit to produce the oil with because their alcohol content, which is the solvent, is not nearly high enough to work properly. So thanks for the advice, Mike, but if I were the public, I would not follow your instructions because, like so many others, you simply do not know what you are talking about. Maybe you and Peter should team up because he now has a stainless steel bucket to work with, and you could call yourselves Death Incorporated, for I am sure that would be the end result for many of your patients. During the broadcast, Mike and Julie could not seem to understand why I would call myself an engineer, and they seemed to be mystified as to why anyone should call themselves such a thing. Well, if they had worked as a power engineer for over 30 years like I have, perhaps they would understand the term somewhat better. And for future reference, in case they ever run into anyone who drives a train, they also call themselves engineers, as do many people in other professions. I must say that I actually feel sorry for them both, because when I was 3 years old, I already understood the term engineer. So it must be very hard for people such as them to go through life with so little understanding of anything. Mike and Julie also seem to have a problem with my lack of formal education, and I believe they stated that someone with a grade 9 education had no right to call the great Lester Grinspoon a clown. Well, for your information, I never went through grade 9, so that is something else these highly intelligent radio hosts were wrong about, and in truth, I had a hard time completing grade 8, because much like listening to their show, I found our education system to be boring, and I soon learned that I could put no trust in what I was being told. As for any right I might claim to call Lester Grinspoon a fraud, knowing what I do about this man gives me a perfect right to call him what he really is, since he felt free to spread lies about me and the patients I have treated, and if there were not so many individuals like him, there would be much less suffering and death in the world we presently inhabit. Simply ask yourself why he has said and did so much to prevent this oil from being recognized, when for decades he has told us all that cannabis is remarkably non-toxic. So for what possible reason would he stand against the use of the essential oil from this very same plant? During the show, both Mike and Julie seemed to delight themselves by calling me the hamster and saying that I was just a grouchy old man. Is this not about the same as what children do when they throw a tantrum because they are unable to get their own way? And does the public actually feel that behavior such as this is acceptable from two people who are supposed to be adults? When dealing with individuals like myself who do not hesitate to take on governments and all the big money interests on this planet, there is little room for fools. So I hope that they have learned a lesson from all of this, and if they ever begin to behave properly, perhaps they will become something much better than they presently are. I would also like to mention the fact that what they felt free to say about me on the air could easily be looked at as being defamation of character and slander. Just like any other form of media, they too could be held liable for spreading lies and slander, and since they have already done so, I believe I actually have the grounds to do a great deal of damage to both their pocketbooks and their futures, if I should choose to do so. There are consequences involved when you step over the line and fabricate things about people like me and those around me, and if I were them, I would keep that in mind. I can actually say what I do about Grinspoon and all the rest of them, because I have the facts to back my statements up, but on the other hand, these two individuals did not. So I am giving them fair warning that if they do anything else to irritate me, it will not go well for them. My name is now becoming well known worldwide, and my cause is gaining legions of followers every day. And soon now this oil is going to be accepted. So if I were Mike and Julie, I would go out of my way to have no further needless confrontations like this. I mean, after all, what were these people thinking when they went ahead and did that ridiculous show, knowing full well that they could not back up a thing they were saying? When I told them that I wanted nothing to do with their interview, they should have left it at that. But instead, they both had to go on and make complete asses of themselves. And I expect that their walk on the wild side has already lost them more than a few listeners. Their little games have cost me a great deal of time, which could have been spent on other things, which would have been much more productive. But after they pulled this nonsense on air before the public, I could do little else than defend my position from the slander and lies they chose to heap upon me. Well, now at least they both know how it feels to be slammed, and in truth they both deserved it. But do you actually think that they had the right to do the same to me, when they must have known full well that they had no just cause to do so? With any luck, I will never hear another word from either one of them again. But in the future, if they still have a future, that is, they had better gain the knowledge required to expose some of these phonies they choose to allow on their shows, or they will never gain the respect of the public. And the next time someone like me tells them to read a book, perhaps they had better give such requests a bit more consideration. For I am sure that they will find that there actually are people out there who really do know much more about certain subjects than they do. Now, since I am here, I cannot think of a better time to challenge the organizations and individuals I have exposed in my book, Phoenix Tears: The Rick Simpson Story. If these people and organizations really have nothing to hide, then they should have no problem doing a show with me and then the public can decide for themselves just who is bringing them the truth. I cannot enter the U.S. due to the criminal record that the Canadian government gave me for saving lives, but I can Skype or call into any show they will consent to do. So come on, Grinspoon, iTimes Magazine, Normal, and all the rest of you. This is your chance to prove to the public that your intentions have been honorable. Or are the statements I have made about all of you in my book perfectly correct? Unlike Mike and Julie, I tend to back up what I say with cold hard facts, which cannot be disproven. So when those I have challenged refuse to come forward to defend themselves and choose to remain hidden in a dark corner somewhere, I think that many will finally come to see them for exactly what they are. You do not solve a problem by avoiding it, and even though I take no joy in embarrassing others, the fact remains that countless numbers are suffering and dying needlessly. So there is no other way to bring this all to a halt. They say you cannot make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So do you believe that they are criminals, frauds, and fools? Or do you think I could be completely wrong about the assumptions that I have arrived at in my book? At present, my books are available on the Phoenix Tears website at phoenixtears.ca in the form of ebooks, but soon we hope to get them into print so they can be read by many more. So come on and support a good cause while going over information that could save the lives of both you and those you care about. And in addition, it will also allow you to judge for yourselves just who and what is real and who and what is not. My name is Rick Simpson, and thank you very much for your time.